Coming up, we're continuing our discussion about Rooted, how we had a great message this last week on suffering, and how we are going to talk about the enemy and what he doesn't want us to believe is true. This is the True Hope Weekly. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of the True Hope Weekly. Got with me again as my guest, Bruce Young, pastor of True Hope Church. And NAMPA's coming up really soon, too.
Yeah.
That's been pretty exciting, putting together stuff for the launch of NAMPA and seeing what God's been doing. And just Sasha's been pretty busy, but he's got a lot of help, and which is really cool. So God is growing our church and doing awesome things. And one of those amazing things that he's been doing is taking us through Rooted. And we heard a great message this weekend about suffering, a message that we often don't like to talk about, but is very essential to talk about because we all go through it. Yeah. And Bruce, you talked about a couple things that I just wanted to go a little bit further with you about, even though I think you had a pretty long message.
It was almost a record. I mean, it was long. And I still didn't say everything that I felt like needed to be said. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about it here. One of the things that you mentioned was a pain graph, and I thought that would be interesting to go into a little bit more. We all have those things, and what does that mean when you talk about that?
Well, it's just I've never seen one before. I mean, I'm a graph guy, and so I just was doodling kind of thing, and trying to ask myself where were the low points in my life in terms of suffering, where are the intense suffering that we've and not so intense. And put it on a graph. And what were the high points, mountaintops, where you go, man, life is so good right now. And fortunately, life includes both of those for most of us. And so I just put it on a graph. I started from when I got married. Okay, so you could start at your birth, but I just started when we got married, and the first year was like heaven. I mean, it was like we had a 1-year honeymoon. It was fantastic. But the second year was much tougher, and the third year. And so that was part of the graph. So, we went through some things like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've heard people sometimes think is, when they walk into a church, they can feel like, oh, this is all perfect people here, or these are people who have their lives together. They don't know what I've been through. But the reality is that most of us have a pain graph, Well,
I think everyone does. I mean, unless you're in kindergarten. And even then, if they could conceive of, remember.
Even not remembering. I mean, I've, studied some of the psychology, and it's like, at those earliest ages, you don't realize how much that influences you for years to come.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was fun. It was revealing for me. And I think I would still say to people, do your own and see where you've been. Look back and realize you're still here. Mm-hmm. And suffering didn't kill you. Mm-hmm. And so in a lot of ways, those are the things that really made us stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. I also loved how you mentioned the stained glass of Jesus that we have at the front of our sanctuary, and how Jesus is at the top there, and he's praying to the Father. Mm-hmm. For those of you, you've seen it, but it's this picture of Jesus in this moment where Satan was wanting to win the day by causing suffering, and yet God turned it around.
The other thing about that I didn't even mention is that whenever we're going through the worst thing we've ever gone through, and we're complaining to God, we're whining to God, which is natural, and we really should be honest with God and not try to be all holy. But in those moments, he says, not only I hear you, but he says, I know. I've been there, because he has, right? He wrestled in Gethsemane, and he sweat like great drops of blood, it says. Mm-hmm. And so the agony of the cross, I mean, so he knows what we're going through. And that's a whole other point that I didn't have time to make. So
yeah. Well, it's an important one. And how does it set us up for maybe what's coming this weekend?
Well, this coming weekend, in the Rooted book, there's an enemy. We have an enemy.
We've got a book right here.
Yeah, there you go. And our enemy is real. He's more powerful than we are. He's It's funny because right now, one of the hot things in the news is about conspiracy theories. Everybody's, should we listen to them, or are all conspiracy theories just bogus? Here's one. You ready? We have an enemy, and he's at work, and he's invisible, and he has devised a conspiracy against us personally and against our world. And so is there a conspiracy? The answer is yes. And do we know all the things about it? No. So this idea that there is no conspiracy is from the devil himself. Mm-hmm. There is. Now, I agree with what most people say when they, we don't want to be seeing a demon behind every bush and a conspiracy behind everything and read into people's motives, which we really can't do or shouldn't be doing. So we want to be careful for sure. But as Christians, we believe that there's a conspirator. Mm-hmm. He's like a lion crouching and ready to pounce, and he's looking for an opportunity. So this is, next to suffering, this is a very important concept for us to grasp.
Yeah, definitely is something that we need to be aware of. And I think awareness in itself is a weapon.
But not afraid. I mean, greater is he who's in us. So, we want to quickly say he's more powerful than us. He's smarter than us. He's been around longer than us. And he has our demise in his crosshairs. But we have Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that's what some forget, is that our enemy, though stronger than us, is not stronger than him.
What do you think some of the strongest tools or weapons of the enemy are?
There is no problem. Mm. You're okay. You're good. So I think he wants for us to believe we're at peace in this world, when in fact we're at war.
Right.
I mean, everything that Jesus and the disciples talk about is this spiritual battle that's going on that we can't see. We can feel it. We can see the effects of it in our lives and others. But absolutely. I think his number one thing is, you got this, no problem. You can control this. You can manage this. Mm-hmm. And it's not that big a deal. Yeah,
I absolutely see that all over our world today. We fight for those things that we feel like make the best life for us today. And instead of realizing that, God has something greater for us even than we can imagine, Mm-hmm. But we're in the middle of a war right now.
And real casualties. Mm-hmm. People are falling, away from God every day. Mm-hmm. People we love. And so we can see the effects. Mm-hmm. And,
But he doesn't want us to see them.
No, absolutely. And so, part of the armor of God that he gives to us is to know how to fight that battle.
Mm-hmm. And discern how to fight. Well, we'll talk about it more this weekend. Yeah. So we hope that you'll be there Sunday at 9 a.m. or 10:30 or online on YouTube. We hope you'll be joining us. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week.